Wow. Pray in every season and with every supplication. Correct, Bob? Is that what you just said?
At
Wow.
all times, in
At
every
all
prayer and supplication.
Wow. All seasons, at all times. Pray, pray, pray. I mean, my sermon should have probably been on prayer. But my message today, my message that Spirit sent, I always feel that God gives me the message for me, and then I share it with you, brothers and sisters. So I'd like to start with some opening scriptures because we are a metaphysical Christian universal tradition. So we celebrate all paths to God. It doesn't matter what faith, tradition, or none you grew up in, there is a place for you here in unity. But we interpret our scriptures metaphysically. That means that we see the esoteric, symbolic, archetypal, almost mythological symbolism, knowing that deep, deep, deep hidden teachings are revealed bit by bit, little by little, and that there is so much more. It's like a great iceberg than the little bit that we see. How exciting. So we begin with, oh, I should probably give you the title of my talk. The title of the talk is, pardon me, from emotional reaction to spiritual realization, how consciousness transforms us. From emotional reaction to spiritual realization. Often, when life feels like it's falling apart, it is so easy to react from our emotions. So let's anchor into these spiritual scriptures. Luke chapter 4, verse 21. We had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. From Luke chapter 24, verse 32. Were not our hearts burning within us while he talked to us on the road? And Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So, my beautiful ones, good morning, beloveds, again. Life will present each of us with circumstances. A world that sometimes feels as though it's falling apart, a political landscape filled with conflict, division, greed, war, and endless discord, a diagnosis, a loss, a disappointment, a betrayal, a fear, a change that we never asked for, an addiction. The spiritual question is not whether circumstances will arise, they will. The spiritual question is this: from what level of consciousness will we meet them? Will we meet these circumstances from a place of fear, anger, despair, resentment? Or will we meet them from a deeper awareness of the presence of God? Today, I will invite us, Spirit is inviting us to explore one of the greatest journeys we'll ever undertake: the journey from emotional reaction to spiritual realization. Not because emotions are wrong at all, not because emotions are wrong. Feel your emotions, discharge your emotions. Jesus, the greatest guru, experienced grief, sorrow, disappointment, and anguish. So the spiritual path does not ask us to suppress our emotions. The spiritual path asks us to move through them into a deeper realization of peace. Our unity philosophy teaches us that there are two ways of seeing life: the emotional self that reacts to conditions, or the spiritual self that responds from divine truth, reaction or response. The emotional self sees obstacles. The spiritual self sees opportunities for awakening. The emotional self asks, why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? The spiritual self asks, what is God revealing here? From why is this happening to me to what is God, spirit, source, your higher power, the quantum field? What is the presence revealing here? So, Jesus, as I call him my greatest guru, our greatest guru, was not only a healer and a miracle worker, he was one of history's greatest teachers of consciousness. Again and again, he invited people to move from fear into faith, beyond separation into oneness, beyond reaction to responding into spiritual realization. So, one of the greatest examples of this movement from emotional reaction to spiritual realization is Peter, from fear to faith. In Matthew chapter 14, Peter steps out of the boat and begins walking on water towards Jesus. At first, he's anchored in faith. Then he notices the wind. Then he notices the waves. Then he notices the conditions. And immediately he begins to sink. How often do we do the same thing? We begin in faith, then a diagnosis arrives, a relationship changes, a financial challenge appears, and we begin looking at the storm rather than the Christ presence, the Buddha presence, the I am presence, the divine spiritual presence within. We look at what is happening instead of being single minded. If thine eye be single, thy body shall be filled with light. If we can keep our spiritual mind, our consciousness stayed on the presence, the storm and the wind may blow, but we shall be anchored in truth. So notice something important. The storm didn't change. Peter's consciousness changed. Peter's consciousness changed, not the storm. This is one of the central teachings of this message today. The circumstances may not change immediately, but consciousness can change when? Now, my beautiful ones. Consciousness can change now. So Jesus asked Peter, why did you doubt? Not as a condemnation, but as an invitation back into spiritual realization. Gethsemane, from fear to surrender. Let's move to the Garden of Gethsemane. Jesus says, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow." This is such a profound statement of grief for anyone who is suffering grief. Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane says, "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow." Jesus doesn't deny his feelings. He doesn't pretend to be happy. Jesus is not doing a spiritual bypass. He feels the sorrow fully, and yet eventually he prays, "Not my will, but thy will be done." Not my will. My beloveds, I want my mother to live forever. Many of us have wanted our parents to live forever, but I know that Spirit's will is being done in her life, in my life, in the body of our affairs. And Jesus said, "Not my will, but thy will be done." The circumstances hadn't changed. The cross was still before him, but his consciousness shifted from fear. Fear became surrender. Resistance became trust. No matter what your Garden of Gethsemane may be, let your fear become surrender and let the resistance become trust. Spiritual realization is not the absence of fear, it is the presence of faith greater than fear. Emmaus, from despair to awakening. Then we arrive at the Emmaus Road. The disciples are devastated by the crucifixion. They are hiding from the police forces of the day, the Roman soldiers. They are in hiding. And they say, we had hoped that the Messiah would come and change circumstances. We had hoped that Jesus would die and be crucified and put in a tomb. We hoped. We hoped. Those three words contain so much of the human experience. I had hope. We hoped. I hoped. We hoped for healing. We hoped for a reconciliation. We had hoped for a different outcome. The disciples believed that the story was over. How many times do we think it's over for us? It's too late financially. It's too late relationally. It's never worked, so it's never going to work again. I was left, I was abandoned as a child. I wasn't appreciated. It's too late. But the story is not over. The Christ presence was walking beside them the entire time. They simply didn't recognize it. How often is Spirit walking beside us, carrying us, as we remain consumed by appearances, conditions, and fears? Eventually, the disciples on the road realized that Jesus was next to them, and their eyes opened, and they said, "Weren't our hearts burning when we were talking to this strange, luminous man?" This is awakening. The outer world has not changed, but everything changed again, my beloveds, because consciousness changed. And let's talk about Job. Job is our final example. Finally, we come to Job, one of the greatest examples of everything of heck hitting the fan, going wrong. Job experienced loss, grief, confusion, suffering. He had questions. He had lamentations, oh, crying, wailing, beseeching, calling out to God. His friends laughed at him for his faith. Your skin is peeling off. Everything's been you're dying in despair. How can you still believe? He had struggles. Yet at the end, he declares, "My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you. Job moves from secondhand belief to direct realization, from information, all of our study, all of the workshops, all of the coming together at church, information which we celebrate, the five principles, we celebrate it, we rah rah about it. But it's information until it becomes transformation, embodiment, from hearing about God to experiencing God. This is the goal of every spiritual path. So Charles Fillmore taught us that our thoughts are formative and that consciousness is creative. Romans 12, verse 2 tells us, do not conform to the pattern of the world. So, what are the patterns? Fear, outrage, division, scarcity, dis-ease, hopelessness, victimhood. Paul invites us into something radically different, the renewing of the mind, a transformed consciousness. This does not mean denial. We are not pretending that challenges do not exist. We are not becoming indifferent. We are not bypassing life or suffering. We are illuminating life. Light does not deny darkness. Light illuminates it. Light transforms it. Light transcends it, my beloveds. So, in all of this talking, what are the 5 practical steps? How do we move from emotional reaction to spiritual realization? First, notice the reaction. Notice the reaction. Second, pause before acting. Pause before going down that rabbit hole of despair in your thinking, in your actions. Third, pray and be still. Pray and be still. Fourth, ask what is spiritually true here. What is spiritually true here in this circumstance? What are the spiritual principles that are ageless, timeless, cosmic, never end, are always true? Fifth, respond from spiritual awareness, spiritual realization instead of reaction. This is practical spirituality. This is consciousness in action. So, beloveds, as I conclude this talk, thank you, each and every one of you. The purpose of the spiritual path is not to change every circumstances. Although we believe we can change our thinking and change our lives, that's not the ultimate bigger fine print. The purpose of the spiritual path is to transform our consciousness. When consciousness changes, our experience of life changes. Peter discovered it. Jesus demonstrated it. The Emmaus disciples awakened to it, and Job realized it. So, beloveds, when the road seems uncertain, when the grief has visited your home, when relationship shifts, when prayers appear unanswered, remember this: the presence that guides galaxies is guiding you. I have to say it again. The presence that guides galaxies is guiding me, is guiding you, is guiding your family, is guiding your chosen loved ones, is guiding this world. My beloveds, your work is to trust. Your work is not to know the answers. Your work is to listen. Your work is to remain available to spirit. For the same divine presence that governs the stars is presence within you, around you, before you, behind you, and at the very center of your being. So we move from emotional reaction to spiritual realization, from fear to faith, from despair to awakening, from resistance to surrender, from questioning to revelation, from despair to the peace that passes all understanding. And so it is. Namaste.